What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and we're back just covering real quick before they actually drop, I believe, in early access literally tomorrow, the 8 subclasses that are coming in the Forgotten Realms player-facing book, Heroes of Faerun. There was a D&D Beyond article released about 4 days ago that just once again reminds everybody what those are. We've already known what these are, but we actually do get new artwork to showcase what these will actually look like, which I believe is the first time we're seeing this artwork. So let's go ahead and dive in and take a look at it. If you like what I do here and like this kind of stuff, consider subscribing to the channel. Here we go. First up for the Bard is the College of the Moon. This is a brand new subclass in terms of not being an update or a revamp of an existing one. If you'll notice when we go through here, you will see several subclasses that existed in a previous life that have been updated to 2024, and then I'll give you some thoughts on some of those here in a minute. But here is our artwork here showing this, I think, tiefling with this sort of harp here. Born of the Moonshays, song and phase magic, your music tells tales of moonlit groves. Weave fey magic and moonlight into song. College of the Moon bards are elusive performers with deep ties to nature and the shifting magic of the fae. With the inspired eclipse option of their moon's inspiration feature, they can vanish in a shimmer of moonlight and reappear elsewhere on the battlefield. Through the Lunar Vitality option, they can bolster their healing spells, restoring extra vitality and granting allies bursts of movement and carry them across the battlefield. As their connection to the tradition deepens, they learn to call down the moon's silver light through Blessing of Moonlight. The Moonbeam spell becomes both weapon and blessing, searing foes while washing nearby allies in gentle restoration. At the height of their powers, Eventide Splendor allows them to share their vanishing tricks with others, letting companions slip away from danger or strategically reposition. So this is something that I very much like when it comes to magic. And again, we've seen versions of this in Unearthed Arcana before. I'm going to reserve I'm not going to dive into any of those now because we ultimately don't know what the final version will look like, but we will know very shortly in just basically a day or two's time at this point. That being said, the concept of altering an existing spell. Now, I don't necessarily love when you build an entire class around a spell. This was basically my whole crux of hatred towards the changes to Ranger. Granted, that was basically the whole base class, and to some extent with Hunter, the subclass, tying it to a specific spell. Now, this is again a moon based bard, so it makes sense to have Moonbeam as a spell on their spell list. But the fact that it takes existing Moonbeam and then more or less I guess what I'm getting to, the crux of what I really enjoy is turning a damaging spell for enemies also into an ally boosting spell in the form of giving, as it lists here, gentle restoration to allies. But it also kind of dives more into something we've seen a lot more recently, which is allowing subclasses to let other classes dip their toe into aspects of other classes, right? So you would say Moonlight would typically, people are probably going to hearken to the Moon Druid, but really what this this is sort of a Fey based bard. And the closest analog I'd say we have to a lot of that would be things like Oath of the Ancients Paladin, but probably more present here would be the Archfey Warlock patron, which has a lot of aspects of disappearing and reappearing and teleportation in the form of Misty Step and other things, which it sounds like this bard has. So I would love to see what their take is for this, expand this across all subclasses, right? Give us a Fey-based barbarian and so on. But either way, very cool stuff. Knowledge Domain Cleric. Now, Knowledge Domain should sound familiar to some of you. This was a domain that was present in the 2014 Player's Handbook. It's one of the ones that did not make the cut for the 2024 Player's Handbook, but is being updated and brought back here. This does beg the question from a lot of the conversations that were like, hey, it's all backwards compatible. If it's all backwards compatible, why are we updating old subclasses? That's an argument people will make. I don't care about that. Personally, I like the 2024 rules. I like a lot of the things that it's changed. Mine are a few things I dislike, but I'd say I'm the lion's share on board with the updates of 2024 because it fixes a lot of the issues. Doesn't fix everything, fixes a lot. And I like seeing, I personally, just as like someone who's grown up with these classes over the past 10 years, as many of you have, I like seeing what the 2024 updated version of those subclasses look like. So again, that's an opportunity here for the knowledge domain cleric to get a glow up, something that was kind of left in the dirt and not like one of the primary options that a lot of people would pick. It is nice to be able to play an intelligence sort of knowledge based cleric while kind of tapping into that wizard aspect while still being a cleric. But either way, knowledge domain clerics embody the belief that knowledge is power. With the blessings of knowledge feature, they master tools and scholarly disciplines, transforming skills and studies into sacred acts. Their mind magic feature allows them to call upon their deity to grant spells of insight and foresight without expending spell slots. As their connection to their deity expands, they receive an unfettered mind feature, which allows them to communicate telepathically to nearby creatures and resist effects that impose intelligence saving throws. There's not a ton of those, but still. At the pinnacle of their devotion, divine foreknowledge lets them glimpse threads of the future, granting the clarity to act with uncanny timing and unwavering purpose. This is sort of tapping into divination wizard, sounds like, to some degree as well. All right. One of the biggest updates and changes is the Banneret Fighter. Now, we saw in one of its instances in Unearthed Arcana, this showed up as the Purple Dragon Knight. Now, Purple Dragon Knight and Banneret are the same in the world of Faerun. Purple Dragon Knights are sort of the etymological term for what they call a banneret in the realm of Cormyr. Cormyr has a specific sect of fighters called the Purple Dragons or Purple Dragon Knights, which are ones that I think originally, forgive me on the lore here, but long story short, there was an ancient black dragon that they killed that was so old that the tips of its scales started to turn purple due to its age, and they slayed it, and then therefore they called the sort of the order of people who helped in slaying that the Purple Dragon Knights. But everywhere else in the world, they were just called bannerets. This is sort of like a battlefield commander, almost like a warlord. In older editions, they basically had access to bardic features, commanding allies on the battlefield to kind of bolster them and things like that. A true battlefield commander. The version that we saw in Unearthed Arcana was called the Purple Dragon Knight, and they could summon an amethyst dragon. That has never been what the Purple Dragon Knights have been about, and it seems like it went back to the drawing board and was cut that entirely. Maybe they'll save that for something else, and instead changed to the Banneret, which is to be, as you can see from this imagery, more of that warlord battlefield commander. It says, Bannerets excel when fighting alongside others. Through their nightly envoy feature, they bridge words and steel, mastering languages and diplomacy to turn tense parley into alliance. With their group recovery feature, they can rally wounded companions to their feet, their second wind breathing life into the hearts of their allies as much as to their own. That's a fantastic feature. It sounds like it's essentially allowing you to use second wind to group heal as opposed to just solo heal yourself. As their training coalesces into leadership, they gain the team tactics feature, which expands their group recovery into an advantage that their allies can use to turn the tide of battle. Perhaps this is as simple as when you use second wind to heal your allies, they also get advantage on the next attack roll they make or something like that. At higher levels, bannerets can call upon rallying surge features, spurring comrades into motion and giving them a chance to strike or reposition as a reaction. Again, similar to a Battlemaster Fighter's Commander Strike, allowing allies to take attacks outside of traditional turn order. And later in their journey, the shared resilience feature lets them bear the weight of the failure of their friends, lending a heightened use of Indomitable to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. For those of you who are unaware, 2024's Fighter Indomitable is fantastic. It used to just be when you fail a saving throw, you can re-roll it. Now in 2024, it's when you fail a saving throw, you can re-roll it with a bonus equal to your fighter level. Again, this is a level 17 feature. You're level 17, 18, higher level. You're adding static 18 to your roll, and it sounds like you may be able to share that benefit to some extent with your allies. Ultimately, with their inspiring commander feature, their courage becomes contagious, expanding the radius of group recovery and rallying surge and protecting bannerets against effects that would lay them low. Sounds like it may be some sort of death protection feature, which is pretty solid. I'm very excited for this. I'm actually finding myself very pro fighter in the world of 2024 D&D, and I'm usually very anti-fighter. Not anti-fighter, but just not something I would consider myself playing because I just usually have never liked what they had. I always felt I needed something more to just especially someone who's been playing D&D for a long time, and I play a lot of spellcasters that have like heavy utility to fix problems. I usually tend to lean away from fighter because I could get a lot of the aspects of fighter with, say, paladin, and then still have access to healing and other functionality. I've been playing a champion fighter for quite a while now, and I've actually been greatly enjoying it. I actually considered playing an arcane archer fighter with one of the more recent Unearthed Arcanas, and the Banneret actually sounds like something that could be a lot of fun, not to mention what kind of craziness you could get into with a multi-class, especially if Banneret is a charisma class, which it seems to be, allowing that Banneret fighter mixed with something like, let's say, Paladin, sounds like it could be pretty wild. All right, speaking of Paladin, Oath of the Noble Genie's Paladin. Now, this is actually a newer subclass that got updated. This came in the time frame that I would have thought would have been left alone as far as, or no, I'm thinking of the Warlock. Oath of the Noble Genie's Paladin is something different. I was thinking of Genie Warlock. All right. Paladins of this oath wield the primal power of the elements as both weapon and creed. With their elemental smite feature, they can call upon the power of 4 different types of genies, grasping foes with earth and might, vanishing in a swirl of wind, unleashing cascading fire, or summoning waves that scatter their enemies. Their Genie's Splendor feature blesses them with an otherworldly grace when unarmored, allowing them to dance through the battlefield like the wind. As they rise in power, their aura of elemental shielding grants themselves and allies in their aura of protection resistance to damage chosen by the chosen element. Again, fire, earth, water, etc. At higher levels, their elemental rebuke feature allows them to turn the wrath of attackers back upon them, reducing the damage of the attack and lashing out with elemental energy. At the pinnacle of their power, the noble Scion feature lets these paladins soar above the fray and bend fate itself with a word. Again, I don't really remember this one too much from the Unearthed Arcana, so we're just going to be pleasantly surprised when it's time to discuss. And then the Winter Walker Ranger, again, it's still base Ranger, so I have my thoughts on it, but either way. Winter Walkers thrive where others perish with their Frigid Explorer feature. They strike with the biting chill of the tundra, their attacks and spells cutting through even creatures with resistance to cold damage. I also like this concept where essentially subclasses are getting sort of elemental adept as part of their subclass, as opposed to it having to be a choice you take in form of a feat. At the same time, their Hunter's Rhyme feature grants them resilience while trapping their quarry in icebound pursuit. As they embrace more of the deadly cold, the Fortifying Soul feature lets them share that endurance with others, restoring their allies' strength and hardening their resolve against fear. When pressed, their Chilling Retribution feature allows them to answer with a freezing backlash that halts foes mid-strike. At the height of their power, Frozen Haunt gives them access to a ghostly snowy form, partially incorporeal and wreathed in a blizzard that punishes all who draw near. Again, this is going to be one of those that we're going to have to just watch and see when we actually get around to looking at the final version once it actually releases. The Scion of the Three Rogue. Now, this is basically, again, if you're a fan of Baldur's Gate 3, you should be very familiar with the three being Bane, Baal, and Merkel, the main three villains of those games, or at least that game specifically. Well, this is you being essentially an aspect, or I guess, almost like a warlock, essentially, of one of the three, or all three, I guess. And that's what this Scion is. So, Scions of the three blend terrifying talent and deadly divinity to devastating effect. With their Bloodthirst feature, they can teleport to a recently wounded foe and strike again, turning another suffering into an invitation to kill. Their Dread Allegiance feature allows them to channel a small portion of the power of the Dead Three, granting them both resistance to damage and a dark gift of magic based on who they choose for the day's work. Again, being Bane, Baal, or Merkel. That's god of tyranny, violence and murder, and death, respectively. As their infamy spreads, they strike fear. The strike fear feature gives them the ability to imbue a target with the frightened condition, then twist their victim's terror into opportunity. The growing corruption within becomes palpable through their Aura of Malevolence feature, which lashes out with the Dead Three's energy when they use their Bloodthirst feature. In time, the Dread Incarnate feature completes their transformation, aiding them to strike when and where their enemies are most vulnerable. Again, it is very much giving sort of cleric, paladin, sort of warlock vibes. Kind of, it's a warlocky kind of rogue, which kind of taps into my concept of the sort of bard being a warlocky sort of bard. So a lot of crossover here in the wizardy sort of cleric. All right, Spellfire Sorcerer. Spellfire sorcerers embody unfiltered arcane energy, their spells crackling with radiant heat and healing light. Through the Spellfire Burst feature, they can unleash the volatile force when they expend their sorcery points, releasing searing flares of radiant or fire damage or surrounding themselves and their allies with bolstering flames. As they discover more of their innate talents, the Absorb spells feature grants them the ability to absorb magic, turning spells thwarted by counterspell into fuel for their own sorcery. The honed Spellfire feature strengthens their Spellfire Burst, expending both the protection and devastation they bring to every battlefield. At their pinnacle, Crown of Spellfire transforms them into living conduits of Spellfire, radiant beings who fly above the fray, shrug off spells, and turn their own life force into protective flames. Again, we have a very kind of skunk vibe. I'm thinking dwarf, maybe Spellfire sorcery here, sorcerer rather. Again, someone who taps into the raw essence of the weave. This is again kind of giving wild magic sorcerer vibes, but a little bit different. Again, wild magic being sort of the Fey based sorcerer. I'm still shocked that we don't have a sorcerer for every type of creature out there, right? Like a dragon sorcerer, a Fey sorcerer, an undead sorcerer. We have some, but we don't have all. And then lastly, the Bladesinger Wizard, another one that's received multiple updates over time when it was originally first released in the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide, then updated in, I believe, Tasha's, and now getting an update again here to bring it in parity with 2024. Again, one that I thought kind of worked fine as it is, but let's go ahead and see what the prompt tells us this update has. When their Blade Song feature is active, Blade Singers can move with the preternatural speed and poise. Their attacks stem from their mind as much as their body, while their focus is sharpened. Through training and War and Song feature, they enhance their skills, master elegant weapons, and use them as conduits for their spells. If I recall, the Unearthed Arcana had them using intelligence now, I believe, as their attacking modifier, which was not the case previously. And then also giving them, I think, proficiency in all martial weapons as opposed to just one. But either way, as their mastery grows, they gain the extra attack feature, which allows them to weave steel and spell together, striking with a sword one moment and unleashing their arcane talents with the next. This is great. This is the replace one attack with a cantrip feature. With the Song of Defense feature, they transform spell slots into barriers of energy, their magic hardening like armor to deflect mortal harm. I never liked Song of Defense, and I think it stayed true to its original form, which is when you take damage, you can expend a spell slot to reduce the damage by an amount equal to 5 times the spell slot. I never liked that feature personally, as someone who's played a Bladesinger a couple times. I never loved it, but you know what? Thing that I think I'm forgetting is that Song of Defense happens, I think, in addition to your resistance. So you would, I think, apply resistance first. So if you're hit by like a fireball, let's say, you're half resistant, you reduce the damage in half because you're resistant to fire, maybe half again if you succeed on the saving throw. And then Song of Defense, I believe, is applied. So potentially reducing the damage to 0, or at least maybe lessening it depending on how it works out, order of operations wise. And at the height of their discipline, the Song of Victory feature allows them to follow powerful spells with a decisive strike, blending movement and incantation into a single flawless composition. If I recall from the Unearthed Arcana, this one I did not like because it was basically you can cast a spell and make an attack as a bonus action, where I believe, and it kind of fights with the original feature because 2014 Bladesinger was basically this lets you add, you could basically, I think at level 14, you added your intelligence modifier to all damage you took while you had Bladesong active. So like if your weapon was primarily using your dexterity originally, you're now going to be adding your dexterity modifier plus your intelligence modifier to the damage. But I believe because they changed it to now allow you to use your intelligence modifier instead of your dexterity modifier, for you're attacking, they removed that option because you'd basically be adding your intelligence modifier twice potentially to just have it be when you attack, when you cast a spell, you can attack as a bonus action. That's okay. I kind of like the original feature because I liked the more static damage, but this may be easier to comprehend overall. But either way, you let me know. We don't ultimately know what the final version looks like. I could be wrong on both of those accounts. We'll see when we get the final version here in just a little while. So, from moonlit melodies to elemental oaths, the subclasses of the Forgotten Realms heroes of Faerun celebrate what makes adventuring in the realms unforgettable, the unshakable belief that you can rise to become the pinnacle of legend in an already epic world. Whether you seek divine insight, mastery of the elements, or the thrill of battle, this book gives you the tools to write your own epic stories across the Sword Coast and beyond. So, yeah, I am very excited to see more about this when I believe early access is the 28th uh of October. So it's sometime I think within this week we should have access to this on D&D Beyond, and then at that point we'll be able to go ahead and make those updates accordingly. So anyway, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, and I will see you all next time.